A second protester in Iran has been executed by hanging just 23 days after he was arrested. The 23-year-old man was convicted of enmity against God for allegedly stabbing two members of the parliamentary Basiji resistance force to death. Shahin Gobadi is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, the parliament in exile of the Iranian Resistance. And Shahin joins me now. Good evening.
Good evening to you and to you, all of your listeners. I hope you have been well.
Thanks so much for taking the time out to speak with us. Now, what do we know about the trial of these latest protesters?
Well, one thing is for a fact that in Iran, such a thing as trial is simply a mockery. There is no independent judiciary. There is no lawyer present. Just basically the judge signs to what the security apparatus asks him to do. You have to remember this is a regime that views this sort of dissent as enmity toward God, and they call it muharebe. And basically, people have no legal defense, and things like due process of law are simply unheard of. And this has been the case for the past 41 years. You have to remember back in 1988, this regime massacred 30,000 political dissidents in a matter of a couple of months in trials that last 2 or 3 minutes. So this is a type of trial that we have witnessed throughout the time that this regime has been in power in Iran.
Can you give us an idea of the scale of the amount of people and the type of crimes that they are accused for that are currently in custody because of the actions of the last 2 months?
Actually, according to the network of the of the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, which is the main Iranian resistance movement inside the country, at least 700 protesters have been killed. Among them, 70 of them below the age of 18, from 2 years old to 70 years old, and 30,000 protesters have been detained. Out of those 30,000 protesters detained, dozens have been sentenced to execution, and the name of about 12 of them is already known. So this is the scale we are talking about, but these people are all in immediate danger, and this should be very much worrisome for the whole international community.
There's very much an atmosphere and intimidation, and fear is a word that a lot of the protesters talk about. But what impact is that having on their morale as they go out to protest openly on the streets?
I think this is a key question of understanding Iran today. Basically, now we are on the verge of 3 months of unabated protests, despite this heavy crackdown, despite this kind of measures by the regime to instill fear among the people. But one thing is for a fact, the genie is out of the bottle. Iran is not going to go back to a status quo ante, no matter what happens, no matter repressive steps the regime will take, as gruesome as it is, as hanging protesters by crane, as it happened this morning in public. The people have made up their mind. In Iran, a revolution has begun. And the fact that the regime is resorting to more and more disgraceful crimes like what we have seen the past few days is an indication of the desperation of the regime.
Shahin,
a few months ago,
I was reading an excellent article on the Times at the weekend, and it talked about how the Iranian regime actually, spies on people overseas and actually looks at events that are going on in the UK and punishes those people who are acting freely in the UK by targeting their families back in Iran. Does this show that the government is getting more desperate there?
Absolutely. But one thing is for a fact, this regime has ruled like this for, as I said, for the past 4 decades. But now things are very much have changed. The young people especially are breaking the spell of fear. They are in the streets. And from the reaction we have seen in the past few days, it's quite evident that this very much adds to the resolve to go all the way through. A few months ago, the overthrow of the mullahs in Iran might seem inconceivable. But now I would say it's inevitable. And that's just a matter of time. And it's time for the international community, as Mrs. Mariam Rajavi, the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, articulated today, for show a robust reaction and take practical measures and effective measures to confront this kind of a savagery by the regime, namely by imposing serious sanctions, by placing the IRGC, which is the main apparatus of killing and terror, in its proscribed list, and also to recognize the right of Iranian people to defend themselves. And this is incumbent on the EU, UK, US, and all the free world to take these actions immediately in order to prevent the regime continuing with this killing spree.
Shahin, thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much.
Shahin Gobadi, a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and National Council of Resistance of Iran, talking about that it is inevitable that the regime will eventually fall, but it needs foreign pressure on the Iranian government in order to do that.